Oh. to have in my life. Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian. Jake is not here, but he will be here later for Rebel headquarters and the post game. In the meantime, we have incredible people on this panel. J.R. Jackson, Mark Thompson. What up?
What's up?
What up, kids? This is great. JR's got his Captain America mug.
I made a projection to save America.
Oh, wow.
America needs some saving, so that's good.
Water at a time.
Yeah, you came to the right place.
All right. In the second hour, Brett Ehrlich will be joining in, and he will be leading the show, which I'm looking forward to. And we have a breaking news story, which we will get to in the second segment of this hour. Elizabeth Warren has proposed some legislation that I absolutely love. I have a feeling that you'll love it as well, and we'll give you the details on that when we come back from our first break. But with that said, I do want to give you some other announcements. First off, let's keep it real. We have an Android app. We started off with an iOS app, and then you good people responded with, what's up with an Android app? And so we delivered on that, and I'm really happy we did because, look, I don't like tooting the TYT horn. Okay. In fact, I've been pretty critical of TYT when Jake is on the air announcing things and bragging about things. I love the TYT app. I actually use the TYT app all the time. I listen to the damage report. I watch No Filter just to make sure, quality control, make sure it looks looking good.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Mr. Samsung, which I am, it's awesome. It's beautiful.
Oh, wow.
I was actually really jealous when everyone had it at first on their iPhones. Probably needed 15 to 20 updates every 5 minutes. So, for most folks, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Now I get to have mine. At least my phone won't break after 6 months or need it.
You're the worst. Although you're actually right about the non-stop software updates for Apple products. Okay.
I have the app, just one last thing, Anna, before you begin. I also have the soundboard, the TYT soundboard.
Do you?
I don't know if that's an official thing or not, but I love it. So I have both the TYT app and the soundboard.
Yeah, you guys should totally check it out. And then if you are interested in checking it out, go to tyt.com/app, and you'll get more information on that. Also, if you have access to iTunes, please download my show, No Filter. We put a lot of work behind it, and I want the show to perform well, to reflect the hard work. So please, if you do have access to iTunes, check it out. It is for free. The audio version is for free. And the name of the show is #NoFilter.
I just would add, I have a podcast that I put almost no work into, but I'd still like people to check it out.
Is it? Are you on our network or are you independent?
Not yet. Jake mentioned he wanted to carry it, but so I'm still waiting. So until then, it's edge-show.com. They're all shaking their head. It'll never happen. I'll never be on the network. All right. Well, whatever. It's called The Edge with Mark Thompson. You can just Google search it.
And last plug, I don't have one.
Anything?
Enough with the plugs. Let's get to the news of the day. The Trump administration has officially revoked the security clearance of John Brennan. He is the former CIA director, and this appears to be a retaliatory move by the Trump administration. Sarah Huckabee Sanders explained why during a press conference. Let's hear from her.
I'd like to begin by reading a statement from the president. As the head of the executive branch and commander-in-chief, I have a unique constitutional responsibility to protect the nation's classified information, including by controlling access to it. Today, in fulfilling that responsibility, I've decided to revoke the security clearance of John Brennan, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency. As part of this review, I am evaluating action with respect to the following individuals: James Clapper, James Comey, Michael Hayden, Sally Yates, Susan Rice, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, and Bruce Orr.
So, Sarah Huckabee Sanders also mentioned, as you can see from that statement, a number of people who the Trump administration will consider revoking security clearance for. Now, some might wonder, well, why do these people need security clearance if they're no longer serving the roles that they were previously in? For instance, CIA Director John Brennan clearly isn't the CIA Director anymore. Well, sometimes what happens is there might be some sort of investigation, some sort of issue that the CIA would want a former director's expertise on. So that's one example of why that person would maintain security clearance. Another example would be, doing work as a consultant because you have extensive knowledge as a former director of the CIA, for instance. So there are uses for having security clearance, even if they're not serving in the CIA or some other intelligence organization. But look, the heart of this matter is not national security. We all know that. What this is all about is retaliating against people that Donald Trump does not like. And Trump mentioned Brennan's erratic behavior. Really? Brennan's the one with erratic behavior? Like, that's a little ridiculous.
There's no authority on erratic behavior like Donald Trump.
I mean, come on. And so Brennan has been on the record very critical of Trump. Trump does not like that. Trump also doesn't like the Russia investigation or what anyone, any official person would have to say about supporting the Russia investigation. So it is retaliation, and it's pretty clear.
It's obvious that it's retaliation. I think that's what people already know. But you have to deny it somehow. So there's a way that they always play both sides. So along with their statements, there was also a point where she said, well, someone asked her, she goes, including John Brennan, these people were chosen not because they were critics of the president, but also in the statement she went on to say that his clearance was revoked because he's among a group of former officials who have, quote, transitioned into highly partisan people. Which one is it? Is it that they weren't chosen because they were critics of the president, or it's because they've become highly partisan people? Oh, maybe they're too partisan because they're too deferential to the president. Maybe they're too Republican and conservative. Because you know how Donald Trump works. He does not like ass kissers. So when somebody is on his side constantly, it's like, you know what? I need to revoke your clearance. Because you've become way too partisan.
No, it's a great point that those two things are at odds with each other, because obviously he's not getting rid of these people because they're too partisan on behalf of the president. They're too partisan in criticism of many of the president's policies. So, of course, this is the evolution of this executive branch. We saw it under Richard Nixon when the enemies list of Richard Nixon was discovered. In this case, there's an enemies list in plain sight. I mean, this president goes after these people. It's security clearances on one day. It's headlines and tweets on another day. For example, Jeff Bezos, who he became angry with because of Washington Post investigations and Washington Post stories that he felt were highly critical toward his administration. He goes after Jeff Bezos by name and Amazon, talking about them getting a break. So this is all consistent with what is a politicization of the White House. I mean, it's obviously a political post, but the executive branch going after, for political purposes, U.S. citizens is an extraordinary thing.
Right, and you have to consider this in the context of what's been going on with the executive branch throughout Trump's stint as president. He has solidified executive power. He has done things unilaterally. He has pushed for ways to do additional things unilaterally. One of the stories that we reported on last week was how the Trump administration is attempting to pass more policy unilaterally that would give additional tax cuts to big banks. And so they don't want to do that through Congress. And that completely circumvents the checks and balances that we have written in our Constitution. It is part and parcel of what this country is supposed to be about, checks and balances. So, look, I'm not, maybe it's wrong to say this, but John Brennan losing his security clearance, like, I care, but it's not the end of the world. He's going to be all right. But I do think this is a big deal in the grand scheme of things when you take this action into the context of power in the executive branch.
It's a warning shot. It's like, they're not cross me, or else I will punish you. Part of the punishment is, as you mentioned, there's reasons that 1.3 million people, by the way, have these security clearances. So these 5 or 6 that he's considered, along with the 3 or 4 that he's already rejected, I'm not sure exactly how much of a dent that is on people who have these security clearances, but it's obvious that this is just a punishable thing. One of the reasons that they have, again, that you mentioned, was to have other jobs. So now it's going to be harder for you to get a job in your field because you don't have the access to the information that you need to have to give the appropriate amount of advice or consultation, whatever it is you need to do. So it's punishing you professionally for having a point of view, or at least voicing it to the American people. It's just that First Amendment thing.
It's such a great point. I mean, Brennan is on the record criticizing Trump multiple occasions. He criticized Trump yesterday after Trump had tweeted about Omarosa being a dog, right? And we have that tweet for you. Let's go to graphic 15. It's astounding how often you fail to live up to a minimum standard of decency and civility. So he goes on, seems like you never understand what it means to be president, nor what it takes to be a good, decent, and honest person. So this is retaliation for criticizing the president. This is This is what big government is.
Right. This is someone who's outspoken against the executive, but this is an executive abuse of power, and Anna's right to point to the global nature, that is the greater nature of this. Leave aside the Brennan thing. This executive is designating certain institutions, the press, for example, and certain members of the corporate community. I gave you the example of Jeff Bezos, but it goes way beyond that, for retaliation. And he is angered enough to actually try to create certain systems within the executive branch for him to retaliate. That's what's so troubling about this, because he does have a lot of power, and he is able to create these additional institutions within the executive branch. So, and last point, Anna talks about the increased tax cuts, which might come through the executive branch without Congress. Think about this. This Congress pretty much rubber stamps what this guy wants. I mean, they've become sort of this cultish group that supports almost whatever he asks for, I guess, short of the wall funding so far. But having said that, you can't even agree to let them have the last vote on whatever additional tax cuts you want. I mean, it must really be a tough task if you can't even trust it to this Congress. So I think it's also a part of that, trying to increase executive power under his presidency.
Absolutely, and conservatives claimed that they were concerned about that under the Obama administration. But of course, that was all, fake concern, because as soon as they have someone like Trump, it's solidifying executive power, increasing executive power, way more than Obama ever did. They don't say anything about it. And I want to give credit to Rich Lowry, who's an editor at National Review. He's a conservative. We disagree on a lot of things. But he is one of the few principled conservatives that I've seen out there who actually does voice his concern about executive power and what the Trump administration is doing. That is not an easy thing to do in today's climate, because in today's climate, if you have the audacity to speak out against Trump as a conservative, they come after you. And he's managed
look what they did to Brennan. I mean,
exactly.
There's a sort of executive branch trolling that's going on that's just insane. I mean, it is a different environment, as you say, Anna.
Yeah,
I mean, it really takes guts to step out at all, especially if you're on the GOP side.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to some other news. Actually, some excellent reporting by TYT Investigates. Following a number of mass school shootings in the United States, lawmakers failed to pass any gun legislation, including reasonable background checks and things that most gun owners actually want. But the Department of Homeland Security is now spending taxpayer money in training programs for children on campuses. They're known as mass casualty events, and they're doing drills for these events, and TYT Investigates poured through documents to give us the details on this. So according to Ken Klippenstein's reporting here, he writes that the DHS has issued a $1.8 million grant in order to create a program providing, quote, life-saving trauma training to high school-age students for mass casualty events. So what would they learn during these trainings? Well, the training program called School-Age Trauma Training seeks to provide the knowledge necessary to stabilize the injured and control severe bleeding until first responders arrive on scene. So someone gets shot, student gets shot, teacher gets shot. The students would be trained on what to do in order to care for that person until first responders arrive. So if there's an active shooter on campus, there's chaos, and people understandably want to run from this threat. What do they expect the students to do if there's an active shooter? To stop and help someone who's just been shot and try to prevent them from bleeding out?
We're living in a cartoon world. We're living in a movie where Jean-Claude Van Damme, sorry, I couldn't think of anyone else.
That is a weird.
That is concerning. We're waiting for Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Or what was that?
No, that was a good one.
Russian citizen.
Oh, so that
not hard to kill, but there was the other guy. It doesn't matter, all of them.
okay.
Sylvester Stallone.
No,
the one who's not Russian.
All right, I'll
he used to break people's legs backwards in all his movies. Anyway, so you're waiting for a hero to show up that's going to stand there when bullets are flying by his head, because every bad guy misses and it shoots right by his head. And then some 16-year-old kid in his chemistry class is going to take a tourniquet, and because he's learned all these techniques with this $1.8 million grant, which then he'll run out and he'll ask for more money from someone else to privately handle this. And he's going to stick his hand in an open wound, maybe in someone's face, neck, torso, leg, I don't know, maybe blood is shooting everywhere. Their friend is dying. Probably their teacher, maybe someone else who's around in the area, maybe themselves. Because, we stay calm when trauma is happening because children have been taught to do this. EMTs are trained to do stuff like this.
Yeah.
And they're professionals, they're adults. And it's what they chose to do, and they're getting paid to do. But now kids, right in the middle of learning about the periodic table, then move on to this training when someone comes in and busts it. Because that's the mindset we have in this country now. Because we think that's normal.
I know. I think there are a lot of clear-headed Americans who don't think this is normal. I think there are a lot of Americans who see that rather than passing just common sense gun legislation, right? No one's talking about banning guns. Maybe some people are, but overall, the arguments that I'm hearing from pro-gun control advocates is, hey, why don't we do something to lessen the damage, right? People should have access to guns, but do they need access to high-capacity magazines? Do they need access to certain types of weapons? Shouldn't we do certain types of background checks, mental health care checks, things like that to ensure that the people who have the guns or who are purchasing the guns should have the ability to do so? But anyway, instead of doing that, all of the onus seems to be on potential victims, right? All of the checks, all of the security, all of the, inconveniences falls on to potential victims. So, maybe we need to have metal detectors in schools. Maybe we need to have people take their shoes off before they enter the schools. Arming teachers. So, again, all of the onus tends to fall on the victims, potential victims, I should say. And so, I don't understand why it needs to be this way. Why can't we have lawmakers who pass common sense gun legislation?
No, I do. I know.
Well, also, and look, this is something that was back, talking about background checks, even some checks on assault weapons, I'll call them. And I know that sure isn't a real gun dealer. There are a lot of assault weapons. They're all kind of, okay, you know what I'm talking, the ones that go, I'm talking about those. The limits on those and background checks were supported by a constituency that was the NRA, that was the gun owners. In other words, this is not such an outrageous idea. But gradually they become more dug in on positions that are even against that. So this is a very tough spot. And of course, as JR says, this is a waste of time. I mean, fire drills and showing people how to exit in an emergency, these kids can handle that, and they can also, they should learn that. But the idea somehow that they're supposed to triage a bunch of fifth graders, some of whom have been shot. But first of all, you can do a lot of damage if you do the wrong thing. And secondly, it's a waste of time and money. And then, to Anna's point, it does nothing to address the overall problem.
Exactly. Amazing. So, the other part of it, the 1.8 million is eventually going to go on and run out. They're going to need more. This is the stalling phase. What happened with arming the teachers? Maybe I haven't been keeping track of it very closely, but this widespread call to arm teachers and provide them with guns when they don't have supplies. To allow them to be able to shoot whichever students or former students they once taught in the face when they come in with a rifle shooting at them through doors and through walls. First off, they have kept that. So that, I'm not sure if that policy or that thought process has run out yet, or if we've been delayed long enough to say, oh yeah, I feel better now. It's been several months since those kids got murdered at that last one that I heard about, not about the one that happened last week, by the way. Yeah. But the last one that I heard about, I feel better now. Oh, and I heard we're arming teachers. Okay, moving on. Now the $1.8 million is somehow supposed to pacify us long enough to go, oh, well, the kids are learning how to put tourniquets on and put pressure. Health education and driver's education are part of the things that this policy said it's going to compare it to. So my kid's going to turn 16. He's looking forward to driving. Maybe I'll give you a new little Honda. Oh, and at the same time, do your driver education. Hey, Johnny, did you learn how to stop severe bleeding yet? In a traumatic situation, say, we got to get on that. Because this is the country we live in.
Well, the teachers having rifles or any kind of defensive weaponry has been rejected by most school districts, I think, in most states, or certainly many. So people, when you really get down to it, understand that more guns in this situation isn't really the solution. Hey, look at Vice President Pence's pep rally that he had a few months ago, where there were no weapons allowed. Here he is speaking to gun owners.
Right.
These are supposed to be the safest people to have guns on earth. And he didn't want a gun in the place.
That's such a great point.
Not one gun.
I mean, but isn't it true of every major political issue? Politicians will build their moats around their person, right? because they want to insulate themselves from the damage that they're doing to everyone else. Because they want to be completely protected while Americans, deal with the bloodshed, deal with everything that's been going on. And again, look, if you love your guns, if you'd like to shoot for your hobby, if you go hunting, I get it, okay? I personally don't enjoy shooting guns, but that doesn't matter. If you are a law-abiding citizen, you should have access to guns. The question is, what are we going to do to rein in what's been going on, this complete lack of regulation? We need to do something about it. By the way, I want to give you a few more details about what these DHS documents say, because some of this is insane. So let's go to graphic 4. The training will also include information on how to use one's hands to apply pressure to a wound when nothing else is immediately available. But here's the part that really stood out to me. One passage notes, trainees are expected to, quote, act quickly and decisively in the face of disasters, thereby preventing death and injuries, minimizing loss of property. Now, in the article, 2IT Investigates added emphasis to that, and allowing for more rapid and efficient recovery. Okay, so the property part. I mean, wow. Okay, nice to see what your priorities are.
So, I don't know the degree to which people directly and personally have to deal with this stuff, but after this happened, this is the letter I got from my kid's school and district. It talked about, I'm sure, a couple of aspects of it. Please have an age-appropriate conversation at home with your child or children about appropriate reactions to an active shooter situation. My child is 6 years old. So, let's have a conversation about the appropriate actions to have if someone busts into your class.
How's that going to go down?
And then what you should do in those moments. I had to have a conversation with my kid about what happens at the PGA thing for the events that happen around school when visitors come on campus and decide to tell them, hey, we're going to have this thing, or there's like a pie in the face event, and he was worried about it because he didn't like pies in the face. That's the conversation you have with kids at that show. You're like, hey, there's no clowns going to be there, man, I promise. That's the normal conversation you have with kids. But instead, you have a conversation about if someone walks in with a gun and what you might have to do in that situation. Also, I'm always at the assembly because we're in California. A lot of these schools, you have assembly outside because we're able to do it year-round. And there's perimeters to the school. And the principal said, in a masked way, does anybody, if there's any parents that are here regularly, that are here early enough to watch entrances and exits to the school grounds, let me know, come to the office and volunteer. And it was masked, but everyone knew what she was saying. And we're like, oh, I'll volunteer to be the first line before my children get killed. If someone decides to break into school before or after, or before school during the assembly, because that's when everybody is together. So this is the stuff that every school, no matter what they've been through or have to prepare to be through, have to consider. So my first thought is, yeah, I'd like to watch because I watch people everywhere I go anyway. I was like, I'll be the first line. So I'm volunteering to be this first line of basically a soldier battle to save my child and maybe others. So we're ready to give up our lives because we're unwilling to do anything about the actual problem we have.
Yeah, because the government refuses to do the one thing the government is supposed to do, and it's to protect its citizens.
So when the kids start seeing adults standing at the edges of the school with their arms crossed, they go, what's going on?
Yeah, and this is an elementary school. That's what, I mean, I love that you started with the story about your son worrying about the party where he might get a pie in the face, and you end up with this very real, gritty situation. This is an elementary school. We shouldn't be dealing with this kind of thing.
We got to take a break, but when we come back, the story I promised, Elizabeth Warren's bold proposal to rein in some of the corrupt behaviors of corporations in the U.S. Stick around. We will be right back.
He's so progressive, he recycles his thoughts. His car cleans the air. He prosecuted a bank executive and won. His idea of Social Security is old people being able to survive. When he builds a bridge, it bridges the income inequality gap. The only campaign contribution he'll accept is your vote. He's the most progressive man in the world.
Not all Democrats are created equal. Support bold progressives, my friends.
Have in common with your daughter?
I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that. You said I had small hands. They're not small, huh? I never heard that one before.
And it did build us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong. Because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was bad.
Jake Uter, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up. Jake the Turks Uter.
Like a TV station this says. The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It's right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little truth power, he's been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America. We're the largest online news show in the world. We're celebrating our 1 billionth view. We're coming.
More politics ahead with Jake Uter.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Bill and host beat CNN headlines combined.
At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed it all less. Shut up.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can support him. He says to me, you won't believe the meeting that I just had.
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
They want him off the air. Jake took an incredible risk. We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it? I wouldn't have done what you did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, it'd be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing an actual show. I guarantee it. It is wrong to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country.
Look, I tell you guys, the most important thing is voting in primaries. Primaries.
I hope every American will vote. Vote for the candidate and party of his choice. Let's vote.
We cannot continue to complain about corruption and complain about what's happening in this country and continue to vote for it.
Let's get it right this time. It'd be a moment of redemption for what happened in 2016.
Welcome back to TYT. All right, I have a lot to get to, so I'm going to get right to it. A few TYT lives for you. The letter hack says, I'm watching the live show while literally passing kidney stones. That might be TMI, but this is proof that I never missed the Young Turks. You're
But
amazing.
that pain is now going to be associated with the show in some subconscious level. Man, we're against this.
All right. Eclectic writes, someone who definitely deserves their security clearance revoked is Donald Trump. How sad is that?
Well, there's some
True,
truth to
it's
that.
so sad.
There's even talk in the administration that there's certain things that they keep from Trump for just that reason, because he is not. Look, in his first week in office, I think he let something fly about an Israeli
that's
contact,
right.
remember, to the
That's
Russians. So there's some truth to that.
Absolutely. The rest of the tweet says, but I'm not sure it would make any difference. It's not like he ever reads anything anyway, unless it's on Twitter or is one page long filled with lots of pretty pictures.
Again,
Yeah.
hashtag truth.
Yes. All right, and then I want to thank our members. Member shout-outs for the day are Juan Oscar Hernandez and Crystal Hesser. Thank you so much for being members. Thank you for supporting our show and keeping us honest. I love it. And by the way, Jake will be here for the post-game, and he specifically called me to tell you guys that he wants to right his wrongs. on the post game.
Wow.
Yeah, he has some confessions to make.
That must be a long post game.
Oh,
He's got a lot of wrongs.
I was like, oh, what did you do? He's like, you'll see. I'm like, okay, I'll let them know. And then finally, it's back to school. All the cool kids want cool threads, and in order to wear cool threads, you need to buy cool threads. You can do that at Shop TYT. In fact, we have a back-to-school sale, 20% off select items. Just go to shoptyt.com, and you can get all those cool, funky shirts.
I like the long sleeve tee up there, upper right.
That is a cool tee.
Yeah, somebody wants to get me one off of the shoptyt.com for my birthday coming up.
Ooh, when's your birthday?
All right, it's not coming up for a while, but still the point is, it is coming up.
Pass along your Amazon wish list. We'll be on.
Okay.
All right. Now to the story that I promised. Breaking news story on Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren has proposed new legislation to prove that she wants to go after some of the corporate greed that we're experiencing here in the United States. Now, this legislation is specific. It's very bold, and based on how things are going in Congress and with the executive branch, it's unlikely to pass in any way, shape, or form. However, if the midterm elections go the way that we're hoping they go, there is a possibility. So let me give you the details of her legislation. It's the Accountability Capitalism Act that would redistribute trillions of dollars from rich executives and shareholders to the middle class without costing a dime. So this is not a tax increase proposal, although I'm sure that's something that she's going to push for as well. It's a little different. So Warren's plan starts from the premise that corporations that claim the legal rights of personhood should be legally required to accept the moral obligations of personhood, right? Corporations are people, my friend, according to Mitt Romney. So if they are people, then they have certain responsibilities and obligations. That's what Elizabeth Warren is arguing. She writes that traditionally corporations sought to succeed in the marketplace, but they also recognize their obligations to employees, customers, and the community. In recent decades, they stopped in favor of a singular devotion to enriching shareholders, and that's what Warren wants to change. So how does she propose to change it? She wants to curb corporations' political activities, and for the biggest corporations, she's proposing a dramatic step that would ensure workers and not just shareholders get a voice on big strategic decisions. So Warren wants to create something known as the Office of United States Corporations, and this would exist inside the Department of Commerce, and it would require any corporation with revenue over $1 billion to obtain a federal charter of corporate citizenship. Right? You're a person, you got to have that corporate citizenship. The charter tells company directors to consider the interests of all relevant stakeholders and shareholders, but also customers, employees, and the communities in which the company operates when making decisions. So in order to achieve that, obviously, you got to bake in those communities into the business model, right? So how do you bake that all in? More concretely, the United States corporations would be required to allow their workers to elect 40% of the membership of their board of directors. So in this case, the workers would have much more of a say. They would have more power in the decision-making of these corporations. It would also limit corporate executives' ability to sell shares of stock. Okay, this is my favorite part. Guys. So let's go back to that graphic. It's important. So it would ability to share shares of stock that they receive as pay, requiring that such shares be held for at least 5 years after they were received, and at least 3 years after a share buyback. Okay, do you understand what's happening here?
They're going to try to prevent the run-up and the cash in.
What's happening right now, because of the Trump-era tax cuts, is these corporations are not reinvesting in their companies. They're not increasing employee pay. A couple of these corporations gave a one-time bonus, right, just to hide the fact that they're not really planning on sharing their wealth with their workers. What they really did is they went ahead and bought their stock, right, stock buybacks, and that artificially inflated the price of these shares.
That's what happened with Apple. They repatriated all that money that's coming back from overseas, $285 billion. They just put it all into stock buybacks, and that's when you get the headlines. Apple, record value.
Exactly. And so what do they do after the stock value goes up? They cash out, right? So people who think it's a good thing because 401ks increase in value or whatever, no. It's very temporary because as soon as the value goes up, the executives cash out. Finally, the other proposal is to require corporate political activity to be authorized specifically by both 75% of shareholders and 75% of board members, many of whom would be worker representatives under the full bill.
Yes, and they're trying to then limit this political activity because it's really, in addition to stock buybacks, there are politician buybacks, and they use a lot of this money to continue to buy off those politicians. It's a corrupt system, we know it, and I love the fact that Elizabeth Warren is working on the Supreme Court decision to consider corporations people.
Right.
And as a result, there's corporate citizenry that is responsible as a person in other ways besides just being able to wash out our political system with money.
Yeah.
So it's a terrific twist, as you say, Anna. It may go, it will go nowhere, given the current configuration of Congress. But it's out there, and I like that it's on the board. And, as you also have mentioned, as Congress perhaps changes in character politically, maybe something happens on it.
They have to answer to this now. So there's always these things that we allow our corporations to based off our worship and culture of them. So they're rich. Man, what do you want to do? Everyone deserves the right to be rich. Why are you hating on the rich? Don't you want to be rich too? That pacifies or actually shuts down everyone else's things. Hey, why am I getting everything stolen from me to give to you?
Right.
The reverse is always the thought process. Hey, how dare these corporations have to give something to you that you earned, by the way? And the government gives you what you earned. It's not a giveaway. We all pay into it, number one. And the other parts are given away. So the narrative has to change. Maybe this is the beginning of it. But with the general politicians have dug in so deep with supporting corporations at this point, the genius part of this is using some of those terms, like you said, the citizenry being if you're a personhood, if you're part of the personhood of the country, you have to act like it.
Right.
So that's something they went with already. So now you have to use that against them. And also, how are we going to pay for all this? Oh, we got to pay. Oh, it doesn't cost us anything.
Yes.
It's disarming both of those empty threats all the time in the first place anyway. So what else can you do? And as you said, it's not going to go through necessarily, Mark. But at least we can make people who aren't going to be for it answer to it and be on record.
Right, that's a great point. That let's start to hold the GOP, those, and by the way, we say the GOP, also the Democrats.
Yes.
Democrats are very much in the pocket of corporate America. We were no fans of the Obama administration on Wall Street and all the rest, so we're just not flag wavers for the left as personified by the Democrats. I mean, they're not even so left on so many issues. But having said that, I do think that this could make people account for where they stand on these corporate issues. Make them stand up and vote on it.
Absolutely. And what I love about Warren is that she has been so consistent on economic policies and really holding corporate America's feet to the fire. One of my favorite videos features her questioning Mick Mulvaney and his views on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We gave you a little taste of that video on yesterday's show, but if you have time, please take a look at the full context of that conversation, that back and forth, because she's a fighter when it comes to corporate America, and that is a ballsy thing to do considering how powerful corporations are in this whole political discourse.
Right, she risks a lot, and she's a fighter who knows her stuff. She knows the X's and O's of the economy so well that she can go toe-to-toe to defend the Consumer Protection Bureau. And as a consumer advocate, she really knows that territory. So I think she comes at it, armed with not only a sense of the fight, but a sense of the facts.
That's the last part of it. Has to be transition is the layman's terms of these things. So they already have the elitists and they're talking about their financial institutions and how they're going to do this. But so when she puts in all these terms, most folks can't understand how it works. So then they'll look and go, oh, well, it's too hard for me to understand. I'll go with the dumb version that they're telling me what's happening rather than knowing what's happening. This is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Most people can understand how this works. And I think, I don't know, she's speaking all those financial terms. I don't have any money. I don't need equity or anything. What does all this mean? I'll just listen to what they tell me is happening with my money and with my life.
And to get a populist wave, to get a popular support for anything, you do need to explain it in ways that people can understand. I mean, I think JR makes a very important point here, which is, they sell as, hey, it's a middle class tax cut. It's a middle class tax cut. You hear that over and over and over again, and then people just blindly repeat and parrot what they hear. It's a middle-class tax cut, when it's actually a corporate tax cut for the uber-rich in America. This is could get popular support because it's a corporate responsibility bill. It's corporate personhood, just like their people in this one way. We've already seen the Supreme Court decision on this. They now are people in another way with corporate responsibility. I think it's very easy to understand and to develop popular support behind.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to some other news. Earlier this week, Donald Trump had a huge signing event to show his support for the National Defense Reauthorization Act. And in that act, as we all know, he increased the budget for the military to $717 billion in fiscal year 2019. And there were a few good things in that bill. One of the good things was the fact that he would increase pay for the military. That was pretty much the only good thing. But there was also something that caught my attention, and I was curious to see how Trump would react to it in coming days. So part of this Reauthorization Act included specific provisions pertaining to Russia. Provisions that I felt Trump wouldn't be in favor of, but he hadn't said anything about it when we reported the story. He said some stuff about it today. Not today, but recently, and I wanted to share that aspect with you guys. So in the signing event, Trump objected to 4 of the 8 provisions related to Russia. Included in the 4 is Provision 1241, which states that none of the defense bill's funds, quote, may be obligated or expended to implement any activity that recognizes the sovereignty of the Russian Federation over Crimea. Now, in 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, which was Ukrainian territory, and the U.S. imposed sanctions on Russia as a result of that. Russia not in favor of those sanctions, clearly not in favor of them. And so the whole point here is, hey, we're not going to use any of the defense budget on protecting Russia and its actions. And Trump does not like that. So Trump argued that the bill would unjustly limit his presidential authority by restricting military-to-military cooperation with Russia and mandating he report to Congress if Russia violates the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty or if he discusses a new strategic arms reduction treaty with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So he's already, spoken out against this. He's on the record. It's unsurprising to me. What was surprising was when he initially signed it, we hadn't heard anything about him being against these Russian provisions.
This stuff, this bill, this defense bill has other stuff in it. It has stuff like American troops in South Korea, for example, and the number of troops associated with the Middle East involved. In other words, there are a number of things laid out there. So it is weird. I mean, yet another weird Russian thing that's carved out by Trump. And it's, again, carved out so obviously. His come-here remarks and that press conference. I can't believe this. Like, if you're really in Russia's pocket, why don't you really try to put on a little bit of a charade? Well, in this case, we're probably a little less of a charade as possible. I mean, you are going to have to go on the record with actual legislation, actual spending. He's had to come out of the woods even further and say, I'm not good with this Russia part.
I think one of the parts that stuck out, I think I mentioned this a few times today, there was aspects of it that these would violate some of Trump's presidential powers, one of which being they were requiring him to report on North Korea's nuclear activities. So I looked at the signing statement that was brought up, and again, in more of the terms, says, my administration will treat these provisions consistent with the president's constitutional authority to withhold information, the disclosure of which could impair national security. So, in speaking to the Congress, it's going to impair your national security to continue a buddy-buddy relationship with your new friend, who's amazingly smart and is tough in the ways that you wish you could be at such a young age. So it's going to impair national security for people to have an update on what you promised would happen because of your summit that was self-aggrandizing?
Yeah, so let me give you the exact wording. So here are bullet points of all the things that Trump objects to. So we haven't even talked about this yet, provisions limiting U.S. support for the Saudi military campaign in Yemen. So U.S. taxpayer money is going toward fighting Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen, okay? That's what's happening. And there is a humanitarian crisis there. There is children are dying as a result of our actions. We're selling arms to Saudi Arabia like crazy, but no one reports on it. No one talks about it. It drives me nuts. Okay, so Trump is against that. He doesn't want any limitations when it comes to helping Saudi Arabia, go after Yemeni citizens the way that they have, civilians the way that they have. Transfers of Guantanamo Bay detainees and the number of troops in South Korea. And then finally, this is what you were alluding to, JR, provision mandating the president report on North Korea's nuclear activities. You know why Trump doesn't want to report on what's going on with North Korea's nuclear activities? Because they're still developing nuclear weapons. After he tweeted that we have nothing to worry about.
Show's over. Right.
Yeah. There's been complete nuclear disarmament. No, there hasn't. You're not a good negotiator. You didn't make a good deal. You didn't make a deal. You didn't do anything. And he's trying to make it seem as though he accomplished something.
Right. I mean, he's a headline stealer, but he doesn't really do anything. And then you see who he's in bed with. You said he's in bed with the Saudis. That's because of military sales to Saudi Arabia. It's all about money. And Russia, that part's about money also, as you know. It's either about money laundering or it's about money loans, money loaned. It's about his Trump properties. It's about any number of things that are associated with money in the main. He doesn't want any limit on his executive power. As we said earlier, he's trying to expand his executive power, and this clearly places limits on his executive power and forces him to own up to certain things that are going on in his administration.
And he hates it. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Alex Jones is at it again. So I'm going to enjoy that conversation. Stick around. We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're going to help us run the country.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
It'd be a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this is a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa! Democracy! We are! Too strong! Thousands of volunteers. You need to be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy. 96% of Americans want it. When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock. We're coming for them! Wolf-pack.com.
Patience. It's a virtue. They think you can put me in a box. But you can't stifle a revolution. Cenk Uygur, you started something. An idea. The truth and honesty matter above all else. And the people love you for it. And for a while, so did I. We could have stood united. A political force of reckoning upon our foes, the hypocrites, the phonies, the unjust. But you put me in this box.
Cenk.
No. You began without me. You began without me. God as my witness. I will be the one to finish it.
There on this frontier we call the internet. A lot of bad folks that gives you. For years, corporate media barons, right-wing Russ
slaying trees.
Mayweather will knock out Pacquiao. Floyd beats his wife.
Hey everyone. All right, I'm going to read some TYT lives for you. That's where super chats are. I haven't been purposely ignoring super chats. I just couldn't find them earlier because I didn't scroll down. Okay, but I'm going to read TYT lives first. Tannen Casal says, how about capital punishment for corporations in states where they still execute people for high crimes?
Oh, wow, that's pretty thick.
Yeah. I Am Sock says, can I get a step further? Can we deport non-compliant corporations and keep all of their stuff, just like we do to illegal immigrants? Also, why should civil asset forfeiture not apply to corporate citizens? That is such a good point. Absolutely. Now let's go to the super chat. All right. Dakota, thank you for your donation. If Democrats can't be bothered to introduce a bill to combat gun violence, then there will be no blue wave. Inaction creates apathy. Totally agree with you. Rudy Acosta says, as an Arizona resident, U.S. Marine, I find it funny that it's harder to vote in Arizona, voter ID laws, vice buying a rifle and ammo. Yeah, it's a very good point. God, we have a smart audience. Colin Robbins Grenerich, sorry if I mispronounced your name, which I'm sure I did. Anna said Elizabeth Warren, and I was hoping to hear, has declared she's running for president. Can't wait till we hear that headline from TYT. I have a lot of love for Elizabeth Warren.
She's a hero, or heroine, whatever.
Yeah, well, look, for me, one of the biggest issues is what's happening to our economy and what these corporations are doing to our workers. And she is the most vocal. Bernie Sanders, of course, is vocal as well. We know this. But there's something about the way she presents herself and the way she fights aggressively. Like, the way she was going after that not Washington Mutual. Wow, Wells Fargo, man, Washington Mutual, that's old school. Yeah, when she was going after the Wells Fargo executive, during that Senate hearing. Oh, it's another one of my favorite videos. Yeah.
Anna just goes home at night, has a martini, and watches Elizabeth Warren videos. That's really...
Sure, a martini.
That's it.
Yeah.
Or martini equivalent.
I've got thoughts about this Warren running for president that a lot of liberals don't agree with. Okay, it's fine. We'll talk about that when it maybe happens.
Yeah, maybe on a post game or something. Okay, let's get to some more news, shall we? Oftentimes when we hear about Donald Trump nominating judges, it's the Supreme Court. Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch. But what about federal judges? Well, a new report looks into how Trump has succeeded in nominating and confirming federal judges who actually end up being the final, say in controversial issues and legislation. So first, let me give you some context about what happened under the Obama administration and what's happening now. So under the Obama administration, Mitch McConnell fought tooth and nail not only to prevent the confirmation of Merrick Garland, who was a Supreme Court nominee pick by Obama, he also fought pretty aggressively to prevent federal judges from being nominated and confirmed. So during the final 2 years of the Obama administration, in which Republicans controlled the Senate, the confirmation of judicial nominees slowed to a crawl, giving McConnell and Trump plenty of vacancies to fill starting in 2017. And guess what? McConnell certainly succeeded. The Senate has already installed 24 appellate judges since Trump was sworn in. That's the highest number for a president's first 2 years in office. So he's setting a record there, and it's not a record that we should be excited about, because these are all judges who are, Federalist Society favorites. They're super conservative. And remember, a lot of decisions don't even make it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will reject certain cases, and these are the judges who are the people who have the final say. Now, I'm going to show you a video from 2015. This is Mitch McConnell talking about how he's going to prevent Obama's judges from being confirmed. Take a look.
And my last question goes to judicial nominations. I am one of those people who wouldn't confirm another judge given the antics they pulled last year. But what is the situation vis-a-vis federal judicial nominations in the process in the Senate right now?
Well, so far the only judges we've confirmed have been federal district judges that have been signed off on by Republican senators.
And do you expect that will continue to be the case for the balance of this session?
I think that's highly likely, yeah.
Okay, so he's clear about what he did. Now, the next video will infuriate you because it's Donald Trump totally spinning this and making it seem like it was a failure on Obama's part. Take a look.
You know, when I got in, we had over 100 federal judges that weren't appointed. I don't know why Obama left that. It was like a big, beautiful present to all of us. Why the hell did he leave it? Maybe he got complacent. That's world-changing, country-changing, USA changing, and we're going all out. But we were left the present. I never said this before. It was like the gift from heaven. We were left judges. They're the ones that judge on your disputes. They judge on what's fair on the environment and what's not fair, where they're going to take your farms and factories away and where they're not. Amazing. It was the gift. Thank you very much, President Obama. We all appreciate it. What happened? How did he do that?
I'm sure they didn't explain to Trump the whole thing. I'm sure they just explained, hey, look, we've got all these court appointments that we can make, and it's going to change the face of America, and you can be the guy to change it. This is really great news. And Trump was on the golf course anyway at the time, so he said, great, do it. Sounds good. And then he just, in essence, creating and parroting something that he's heard before.
The obstruction by Republicans in Congress, specifically, Republican senators during the Obama administration, was just disgusting. And also, the weakness from Democrats in office was also disgusting. Fight. There was very little fighting. There was very little, bravery from Democrats at that time, and now we're paying the consequences for that. So there are 179 authorized judgeships for the U.S. Court of Appeals, with 24 confirmations and 13 vacancies to fill. Trump and the Republicans have the power to install more than 20% of the judges on the nation's second highest courts. By the way, these confirmations are not based on votes on partisan lines. You have Democrats confirming them as well. So that, goes to show you that Democrats, they're incredibly weak when it comes to this stuff. Republicans fight.
Yeah,
they
the
don't.
was maybe to get them from the Democratic side, to get maybe these guys that are controlling things when you have the presidents there, try to get some kind of appointees that they'll accept. Oh, if we just want a small middle ground, maybe they'll accept it. When over and over again, as we saw in the Hugh Hewitt show when McConnell was there, the plan is to do nothing. Talk about his proudest moments, making sure that this president didn't get a nominee. And that's outside of the Supreme Court nominee. Every other kind of nominee. Remember when pundits and conservative talkers were saying, hey, you know what? There's 3 vacancies on this particular appellate court. We can work with that many. We really don't need that many judges, do we? For some reason, they send these judges. Some of the judges are in place. And Trump and his foolishness there in that clip, he said these judges will judge your disputes, your environment policies, your farms. In other words, he sees the judges as a way to confirm his policies about environmental policies, ways to open farms, ways to open corporations. He sees everyone as backing him up or against him, not judging on a case by case fair basis as a judge should do with this judgment, but because, hey, I appointed you, you do what I say. This dictatorship works that way.
Well, he's absolutely right. They are going to affect environmental policy, the poisons that go into the air, the land, the water, all established by those courts, and the cultural footprint of this country is going to change with all of these appointments.
Absolutely. It's depressing. just remember that this is not an issue that only impacts us while Trump is in office. This is an issue that will have an impact on our politics, on our country, for decades.
Even Trump understood that.
Yeah.
Straight up said, yeah. It's world changing. It's America changing.
Yeah, I mean, this is a cultural toxin, and it may be one of the worst things that this administration does.
Yeah, because it has a lasting effect. All right, now let's move on to Alex Jones. Twitter has decided to suspend Alex Jones for 7 days, 1 week, following the discovery of a video that he had tweeted where he was inciting violence. Now, he has been banned from various social media platforms, and the reason why he was banned, in my opinion, has to do with the fact that he is inciting violence. That's something that no one should be allowed to do. I don't care, whether or not you're a free speech activist or not. Free speech does not protect inciting violence. And even in this case, we're not talking about the federal government. Of course, we're talking about private companies. But even in a federal government situation, the government does not protect this kind of speech. The Constitution does not protect this kind of speech. But anyway, people don't understand that. It drives me crazy. So with that said, you can tell I'm bitter about this, right? Because the arguments are so incredibly ignorant, it drives me nuts. So finally, Twitter decides, okay, here's a video of him inciting violence. We got to do something about it. So let's go ahead and suspend him for 7 days. We'll have a discussion about whether or not that makes sense, but I want you guys to judge for yourselves by watching the video that Alex Jones had tweeted. Take a look.
It now stands with you and the U.S. military, who I know already understand who the Chi-Com operatives and the traitors are, to understand who's trying to take the First Amendment. We're under attack, and you know that. You pointed out mainstream media is the enemy, but now it's time to act on the enemy before they do a false flag. I know the Justice Department's crippled a bunch of followers and cowards, but there's groups, there's grand juries, you call for it. It's time politically and economically and judiciously and legally and criminally to move against these people. It's got to be done now. And let's go. Let's do it. Because they're coming. America needs to know that they've got their little pathetic commie red teams ready. And they've got their targets picked out. The sheriffs, the judges, the police chiefs, the patriots, the veterans, the talk show host, everybody. And everybody's going to be amazed when they come, when those cowards come. And it's going to hit in the middle of the night, and they're coming. And they're coming. And they're coming. They think they can really take down America. This is it. So, people need to have their battle rifles, everything ready, their bedsides, and you got to be ready.
Okay, so here are the problematic parts of that insane rant. Now is the time to act on the mainstream media, and he says get the battle rifles ready. Okay, that incites violence. If you want to have a discussion or a monologue where you're critical of the mainstream media, have at it. Of course, you're able to do that, and I would support it, even if I disagree with what you're saying. You are not allowed to incite violence against anyone, including the mainstream press. You're just not. If that is not protected speech based on what our Constitution says, and when it comes to private companies, if they're concerned about that kind of speech, they have the ability to do whatever they want, whether it's suspend you or block you. The thing is, he hasn't learned anything. And the thing that Facebook did wrong was their lame excuse or their lame reasoning for blocking him. No, don't block people for hate speech, right? I mean, people disagree with me on that. Some people think you should be blocked for hate speech. I don't think that's the case. I don't agree with that, but I certainly do not agree with inciting violence and having direct targets and encouraging your listeners and your viewers to go after those targets. That's insane. But people think like, oh no, but I like to talk about conspiracy theories on my show too, so are they going to block me? I mean, people are worried about themselves. How about don't incite violence and you have nothing to worry about? It's just so pathetic, man. Because here's the thing. We're not interested in protecting Americans. We're not worried about people's safety. We're not worried about, parents who lost their 6-year-old in the Sandy Hook shooting getting harassed and targeted and doxxed by numerous people who watch Alex Jones and believe his conspiracy theories. We're not worried about protecting them, right? A woman went to prison for 5 months because of what she was doing to that family, right? We don't care about them. We care about Alex Jones. But here's the thing, we don't even care about Alex Jones. Everyone's worried about their own ass. Like, oh my God, what if I get censored? Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, I will fight as aggressively as I need to make sure you don't get banned. But someone like Alex Jones, he deserves to be banned because he incites violence. That is not protected speech. And I wish Facebook and all the other platforms were clear about that. Because saying that you're getting rid of someone for hate speech is not the right way to go about it.
The concern with being misunderstood and crazy fans going, I can't believe you stopped my Messiah's free speech to say insane things and try to get people murdered. But I guarantee you, if the parents of one of those kids that was killed in Sandy Hook threatened this guy, they would be they'd be suspended, they'd probably be arrested, they'd probably doing time for the same things that he's inciting others to do. So he sends his minions out to do things. I mean, common pizza, wasn't it? That guy goes to jail. But who's still on here talking? This guy. This is how it works. You can send off your soldiers to do your work, you go to jail, and then continue on and even use those instances of them going to jail. But like, you see, the cops are coming to get you. How many times do they growl to get you? No, they're coming. They're coming. Like, it sounds like a cartoon, but people who read into that are that their fear is rising. And then when people get afraid, especially in this country with the number of guns and weapons that we're told we have to use because it's a birthright to go shoot someone in the face, they go, this isn't the turn of our country's freedom. We're supposed to go kill.
He did a video accusing Robert Mueller of having sex with children and running a sex ring. How is that okay? How is it okay to do that?
That would fall under free speech. It's insanity.
Hold on, but it does not fall under free speech if you state that as a fact. If you say, I think Robert Mueller is doing X, Y, and Z, that is protected because you're saying it's your opinion.
Sure.
He reports it as if it's facts, right? And so, look, Robert Mueller's got all the protection in the world. He's going to be fine. But when you go after private citizens who are now, unfortunately, in the public eye because they lost their kids in a mass shooting, they don't have those resources. They can't protect themselves. That's where the issue is.
The heinousness of Alex Jones really is all in the Sandy Hook thing. You don't really need to go much beyond it. You can go beyond it, and we have, and we detailed, and I'm sure we'll detail more. But the idea that Sandy Hook, the horror of Sandy Hook, which should have provoked legislation on guns, which certainly brought us all to great sympathies to that family, to those families involved. The fact that could be exploited for some crap about how there were crisis actors and it was all phony. I mean, it's heinous. It's the only word that comes to mind. It's obscene. And I personally believe that we sanitize these stories with all these shootings, these mass shootings, and that's a great one that I can use as an example. You see the yellow tape, but you don't see the horror of those elementary school kids with their brains and bodies splayed out by bullets. So Alex Jones then can come on and say, hey, it wasn't even real. These are all crisis actors. And then, to the point that individuals who subscribe to Alex Jones and follow him like some messianic creature, they can then do his bidding and go after these grieving families.
And that's what's been happening.
It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. So, Jack Dorsey, who is the CEO of Twitter, had a conversation with Lester Holt, and the topic of suspension versus ban came up, and here was the reasoning behind Twitter suspending Alex Jones rather than banning him.
You've taken action against him in this instance. What is it? Can you tell us what it is?
I believe we put him in a timeout, removing his ability to tweet for a time period.
A timeout seems minor compared to the implications of someone suggesting a call to arms against a particular group, in this case, the media. How do you respond to that?
Well, I feel, any suspension, whether it be a permanent one or a temporary one, makes someone think about their actions and their behaviors. And
I think Alex Jones is going to change his behavior based on a timeout.
I don't know. We have found that it does have the potential to impact and change behavior. So whether it works within this case to change some of those behaviors and change some of those actions, I don't know.
It worked on the 12-year-old kid that was tweeting, bullying things about her friend in middle school. It worked on her. We found some other instances. It works when we put teenagers on timeout, it really hurts them for those 7 days. So they come back and they change it.
Yeah. So, look, whatever, it's a private company. They can do what they want to do. So if they want to suspend him rather than ban him, that's their decision. But for the platforms who have made the decision to ban him, come out and explain clearly why he deserves to be banned. Because when you say you're against hate speech, that, that leads to a fear among all sorts of people who think they're the next to be targeted. And no one should be targeted for sharing their opinion on whatever it is. I mean, people are making hate speech videos about me right now, and it's fine. Do you, boo? Right? I will fight for your right to put those videos up. But you cannot incite violence against innocent people. It is a dangerous thing to do, especially in a country like the United States where we're swimming in guns and mental health issues.
For the record, I will fight against Daniels for you to make hate speech videos. That's about it.
Yeah, he's against it. We have a disagreement there.
I'm still in
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine.
No, look, the idea that people are making hate videos about you, yeah, I do find bothersome, but in the extreme. but there's a lot, I think there's a lot to think about with Alex Jones, because he's just one of a number of sort of new media figures who are exploiting the medium for potentially, and as we've seen, demonstrably violent ends.
Absolutely. All right, guys. That does it for the first half of the show.
This was fun.
Yes.
Wow, I feel so good after all this.
Do you really?
Oh my God, this is
A cleansing. I'll remind everybody of a new episode of my podcast.
Yes.
The Edge with Mark Thompson. Yeah, we don't talk politics in this episode, so
Oh, I'm definitely listening.
you get your politics there and other stuff there.
I come away feeling a lot worse than I do right now, because I feel great after these conversations.
By the way, Jake mentions on Old School incessantly that I keep urging him to not talk about politics so I can enjoy it. I listen to Old School every episode. But I wish he would stop saying that, because people listen to it for politics. But anyway, come on, guys. I'm tired. I just want something fun.
Yeah.
And it's fun when he and Jake, he and Ben, or you guys just talk about nonsense. It's just a good way of. It's great.
That's true. No, it's definitely nonsense.
I love
When I'm on Old School, we talk about real things. And we have fun. These guys are nonsense.
All right, thank you, JR Jackson and Mark Thompson. Make sure you check out The Edge and 2IT Sports, where JR is a frequent host.
We'll talk.
All right, guys, we'll be right back with Brett Ehrlich.
You know what's interesting about the Young Turks is that people do associate wrongly that the Young Turks has something to do with Turkey or Turkish people. It has nothing to do with Turkey or Turkish people. It happens, though, that there's a guy who's a Turkish guy who is involved in starting the Young Turks, and so I have a lot of trouble making that point to people. I know. They go, what are you talking about? Jake Huber? I say, yeah, that's not the point. It's the rebels. They're rebels.
I know. There's an argument to be made that we should have gone in that direction. But I remember me, Ben, and Dave sitting at Tony Roma's and talking it through, and I think the absurd point that won the day back then was, well, I already had this website, I already kind of had a little bit of a show called The Young Turk, and then so maybe that was a brand. Looking back on it, no one knew that. 3.5 people knew that. Of course, picked a different name. I love that. It was cool, and it made sense. It was Young Rebels, and we hated the system, and we wanted to overthrow it. But then, but we knew that, they could get confused. What if it's a Turkish show? A lot of people will know. We knew that particular downside. Other downsides we should have known, but didn't know. But what won the day was that, there's already a website. That's hilarious.
Clippers fans, I'm sorry I have to do this to you, but picture this. From North Carolina, at guard 6'6" for your Los Angeles Clippers, Michael Jordan. Oh, what could have been. The Bulls thought about it long and hard. They were almost sure the deal could get them to a title faster than staying with Jordan, but in the end, Ryan Gortell's firm things. It took 2 more years, but the Bulls got past the Pistons behind Michael Jordan bolted up. Doug Collins
fired for some assistant coach named Phil Jackson. Yeah, he was promoted. The Sox stayed in the city. The Bulls won 6 in 8 years. The White Sox won the World Series. Jerry Reinsdorf beloved and adored in the city. And the rest, my friends, is history.
This isn't Anderson Cooper. If you say some BS, I'm not simply going to let it slide and then move on to the next thing. This is what the establishment does not understand about politics. You can change the conversation.
This is my place in that broader revolution.
First have to fight to prove that we are free. We then have to fight for our freedom. Then we fight for our equality. And now we are fighting for our survival because your militarized police force thinks it's okay to shoot us at any point in time. What's happening in society today is it's hard to think about.
We're all out here. Everybody that cares about where this country's going, we're out here.
We are going to win this fight. We are going to transform this country.
Whoever wins this primary wins the seat.
We just took down one of the top establishment Democrats in the country. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley. Down goes Crowley! Down goes Crowley!
I am Jeff Gowdy. I'm an editor with TYT. I mainly work on Facebook videos, but I also do stuff for Flick. I've been doing some clips for the Daily Report as well, John's show. If I had the possibility to shoot and host and edit my own show, I would probably have to do something cooking. Go around Los Angeles and find the best chilaquiles. Find the best Mediterranean food. Where can I get the best gyro? I think I consider myself a little bit of an expert on the subject.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TYT. Brett Ehrlich joins us. Super excited. Brett is a man of many talents.
Yep.
Go ahead. You wanted to talk about a commercial that we just played if you're watching live on our feed?
Jeff was in the commercial. Watch the live feed if you're listening somewhere else, but watch live feed. Sometimes you'll see commercials starring Jeff Gowdy, who was in that previous commercial. One of the most delightful presences on camera at TYT Network. Amazing. I just wanted to do a shout out for the behind the scenes TYT thing.
Yes.
All pretty spot on accurate of everyone's personalities here.
So I enjoy the ads that we play featuring people behind the scenes way more than the ads featuring us. Except I like your good news and good booze line. Happy Half Hour.
Malcolm. And I think Ashley also said something similar, so that's shout out to them.
Yeah.
Yes, so also, if everyone has some time right now, you're wondering if you can watch on YouTube TV, please watch No Filter,
Yes.
Damage Report, and Happy Half Hour.
Yes.
If you don't have YouTube TV and don't want to sign up, that's fine, but also you can download the No Filter and Happy Half Hour as a podcast. You should go do it right now.
Please.
And
Please do it.
it's a No Filter broadcast live, and we also one time showed a commercial for the show during the show, and I was in the control room and saw it go to Anna, and I freaked out.
Because you thought we were live. And No Filter is different from anything that we do in the network because in some ways, it goes back to traditional news production, right? The content is not traditional, but the way that we present it is, meaning it's, a lot, it's planned to the T, right?
The closest, yes, I would compare it to a well-researched things you'll see on John Oliver, written, great team, great production staff, everybody.
I love doing that show.
Watch that Mondays at 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern on YouTube.
Yes. All right, a few TYT Lives for you. Not the Hobbit says, there's a grain of truth in what Trump's saying about Obama's leaving judicial vacancies. Obama could have used recess appointments during the intersession recess, if nowhere else, to fill those seats. Let the judges build up records and dare the GOP to reject them. That is a good point. Absolutely. Dynasty says Alex Jones incites violence and gets rightfully banned from Twitter. Thank you for including that rightfully. And it is temporary. Trump threatens war against other countries, and he still has a Twitter account. I know. And I don't know what the answer is to that, right? He's the president of the United States. I don't know what the answer is. But what I can say is Alex Jones has absolutely no right to start, inciting violence against innocent people. And I will fight against that as much as I need to.
Yeah, watching Game of Thrones, I watched all of Game of Thrones over again, and a couple of things. First, the Obama recess appointment, he tried to do the Ned Stark thing and be honorable about it, but he should have done the Cersei thing and just done that. And then, I forget the other thing, but yes, watch Game of Thrones. It's been a long day already.
It has.
For a very long time.
Savvy666, great name, says banning Jones is very dangerous. He will now be using all of his anti-impotence and super hairy back potions himself and evolve into his final form. Gay frog, tinfoil, mecha, Jones.
Love that. That's funny.
All right. There are a few other super chats, which I promise I'll read later, but we got to get to some of the stories. Brett, do you think?
Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she misrepresented reality. Nothing new, but the new thing this time is she actually apologized for it. The original statement was made at a press conference that she gave, one of the rare ones, because she's doing fewer and fewer these days. But here's what she had to say originally about employment numbers for African Americans under the Trump administration versus the Obama administration.
Since he took office, in the year and a half that he's been here, has created 700,000 new jobs for African Americans. That's 700,000 African Americans that are working now that weren't working when this president took place. When President Obama left after 8 years in office, he had only created 195,000 jobs for African Americans. President Trump, in his first year and a half, has already tripled what President Obama did in 8 years.
That does sound like he's really nice when it comes to African American unemployment. Unfortunately, that's not true. The numbers were wrong. Yahoo News reports that Black American employment rose by 3 million. Obama created 3 million jobs during his time in office. Now, Sarah Sanders issued a apology, which looked like this. Here she says, correction from today's briefing, jobs numbers for President Trump and President Obama were correct, but the time frame for President Obama wasn't. I'm sorry for the mistake. But no apologies for the 700,000 jobs for African Americans created under President Trump. And she also includes, the White House CEA, this is her doctor's note excusing her from Truth Today. They apologized to her.
Her apology / non-apology wasn't really, even that was a little misleading.
Yeah.
Because she can't help herself. But I want to give you some of the percentages to give you a better sense of what happened under Obama and what continues to happen under Trump. So the New York Times noted that when Obama took office, which was during the Great Recession, the unemployment rate for blacks in America was 12.7%, right? Very high. But according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the rate had increased to 16.8% in March of 2010, and then finally it began to fall. So it takes time for legislation to work or policies to work. It fell to 7.8% by Obama's last month in August in 2017, and it continued to drop under Trump to 6.6% in July of 2018. So that's not me, congratulating Obama, by the way, because as I've said on this show, I don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican who did all this, right? What I care about is the quality of those jobs, and as we talk about on No Filter, the quality of those jobs suck. Okay, they're not paying well. A lot of them are temporary jobs. A lot of them are part-time jobs. We never have a discussion about whether or not people are getting paid a living wage and whether or not the middle class is growing or at least maintaining itself. No, the middle class continues to shrink because people are underpaid. So the quality of jobs matters way more, in my opinion, than the unemployment rate.
Yeah, listen, of course if you're Trump, you want to compare everything to the first year of Obama's presidency because he took office when things were the worst. Yes, that's a gift. And this is Trump also inheriting a functional economy when he took office. And that is everything is not my saying, but it's a very apt saying in this. Everything that he does, where he's born on third base and thinks he hit a triple.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Definitely.
He absolutely did. And then all of his, when did she say this in her press conference? This is literally moments after she was asked, can you guarantee that there's not going to be a recording of Trump saying the N-word? And
Right.
she says, I can't guarantee that. And it's literally like 15 seconds after that, because that's their argument. Their argument is, like, I don't like black people. I'm Mr. Black People. I do so much for them. Like, give them jobs. And like Andy says, it doesn't point out what kind of jobs they are. Doesn't point out how much better he could be doing for black people. Doesn't mention that in every other tweet is something undercutting any strides that minorities are making. Talks about the NFL protests. Talks in basically what he's saying. The argument, lying to folks, trying to say how nice he's being to them, is like he says about all black people, you're too stupid to understand how good I'm being to you. And that's what's so frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, as we've said on the show, whether or not Trump has uttered the N-word, and I'm inclined to believe that he has, it doesn't really matter. What matters is his actions, what he has done for or against the African American community, the things that he's done in his past when it comes to the African American community, the black community, the renting discrimination issues that riddle Donald Trump's past. Like, all of those things matter way more than what Trump may or may not have said on tape. So, again, I think the economy is an important issue, not just for the black community, but for Americans overall. And I just want the mainstream media to do a better job in reporting what the reality is. Because if you look at the reality, if you look at what's going on with stocks, if you look at what's going on with the quality of these jobs, you see how average Americans are really struggling, even under these like rose-colored glasses perspectives of the economy. You'll know, like, hey, this is not working out for us. There are real problems here.
Yeah, it's like when there was that one jobs loss, the growth report, he said,
the 4.1% GDP growth drove me crazy.
Yeah, he was like, we got 4.1%. We never thought we'd have 4.1%. First of all, you promised 4% annual growth.
Yeah.
Not just a quarter. You had the previous quarter was like 2%. We have the graph. The next graphic is actually like a chart saying 4% growth over time. Not to mention, like, there's 4 quarters during which Obama had more growth than you did, and you're saying that you outperformed him. That's what's so frustrating.
Right.
It's so frustrating. There's so many implications about this, and how pissed I've been at the news lately.
Yeah, me too, especially when it comes to reporting about the economy. And look, GDP growth is great, but it doesn't give you a full picture of what's going on. You have to ask yourself, or you should investigate why we had 4.1% in GDP growth over the last quarter. Is it because Americans are getting paid more? No. Is it because there was more consumer spending? Yes. But that consumer spending was due to middle-class Americans, working-class Americans taking out more debt in order to buy products that they need. And then there's the other part of the equation, which was, China importing soybeans ahead of schedule in order to, prevent paying the tariffs before they went into effect. So that's what really fueled that GDP growth, and we're unlikely to see that in the next quarter.
Yeah, and you're talking about how great life is for African Americans in this country, but you're doing so much more, sir, for all of the millionaires and billionaires that you just give a giant tax cut to. Don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining.
I've never heard that.
Really? That's an old thing.
Is it?
Those are both, like, the born on third base thing, you hit a triple, is really old, so it's don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining.
All right, well, he pisses on our legs all the time.
Yep.
That's what he does.
If you have to go relieve yourself, please do, because we have to take a break.
We do have to take a break. I will read some super chats and TYT Lives when we come back.
You're doing a show that's blowing the doors off everybody. Young Turks is the largest online news network. Not a big deal. We're going to rock the boat. We're going to be counter-establishment. We're going to tell people the truth to the best of our abilities. We're so sick of this corruption. We're not the robots on TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care. 4th day on Occupy Wall Street. Last night we launched Wolfpack. It's us pushing our ideas out there, trying to help the country in every way that we can, trying to make this place just a little bit better. Reporting from the Hillary-Bernie debate, I gotta be honest, you know what we do? We cover it for real. For us, this system isn't working. Free and fair election! unprecedented appearance by a female on Old School. When you were growing up, what did you want to be?
I think I was starting to think I don't want to do one thing. I did live up to that.
Well, mission accomplished it, because Dave was a geologist.
Yeah.
And now he's, helped found the Young Turks. Even within TYT, you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So, if you want to do different things, you nailed it. All right, last story to end on is a Dave story. Whenever there was something that obvious, glaring, you would go up and ask them about it. Like, it could be like a giant church, right? Somebody standing in front. You usually they go, pull up, right? Whatever. Like, hey, do you know where there's a church around here? They're like, yeah, right here. It's right here.
Practical jokes. Spice up life a little.
I'm here today to announce the program known as DACA is being rescinded.
We don't run our own country. We've lost our democracy, and all we have left is rage.
We're the Democrats. I would be on every cable news channel screaming and yelling and talking about what the Republicans are doing right now.
How do you expect us to get excited to show up to the polls for these loser Democrats? How come we have nothing but cowards? We'll never fight. Primaries are everything.
Building a great wall on the southern border.
You have politicians who fearmonger about disenfranchised groups.
First attacker came through the visa lottery.
Now they are against legal immigrants.
Ending chain migration.
They don't want people from those countries coming here because they're being racist. This guy's an absolute monumental disgrace to all of us as Americans.
I ordered to launch precision strikes on targets.
That is what I was warning about for literally years on this program. This is what they promised they would do if they got into power, and what do you know? They did it. I've now shown dozens of videos on the Young Turks of cops handcuffing people who are bleeding to death. His life means nothing. We've been trained to be cowards, so we're going to handcuff that guy bleeding to death. What does this law mean? These are all just basic BS coverings.
Every politician who is taking donations from the NRA, shame on you.
They said that this was impossible, but now we're beginning to move that boulder. And at the end, we'll get our democracy back. Primaries will live in hell out of these Democrats. And let's take over the party. That's a ghost show. Let's board it. Let's take it.
Hi, my name is Esther. I'm the associate producer for the main show. What are we working on right now? So anything that has to do with the main show, whether it's grabbing elements or helping Jake or helping the host or doing research, I could go on and on. It's really fun and really nice because it's different every day. You don't know what kind of content you're going to get. You don't know what kind of breaking news you're going to get. You kind of have to take that and put it in order, and somehow it becomes a show.
All right, TYT Super Chat, Peter Hamby writes in. Thank you for the donations, by the way. We really appreciate it. He's been against those who grieved for years and still incites people, he's talking about Alex Jones, because he disagrees with what everyone has suffered. A week off Twitter is a slap on the wrist. Look, I agree. The Jack Dorsey and Lester Holt interview where, Dorsey thinks that, he's going to learn a lesson from being suspended from Twitter for 1 week. But, he just got banned from a bunch of social media platforms and learned nothing. He continued to incite violence. But whatever.
Dan Evans and who works here, and John Idarola had this great thing that we need to make, which is when Alex Jones got banned from Twitter, Facebook, and it's going to be another Game of Thrones reference, get ready. There's a part where someone gets stabbed and they keep going every time they go, for the watch. For the watch.
Yeah.
And that's what they want a motion track like Facebook logo over the person's face. Be like, for the watch, and Twitter, for the watch. It'd be great. Because he just got totally eviscerated.
Yeah.
It was fun to watch. I enjoyed it. And Jack Dorsey was just equivocating. There's a book about the founding of Twitter that just kind of reveals how much of a power grab among the founders it was and disorganized. And that's one thing that when you look at Silicon Valley companies, you just kind of have to understand it's a bunch of people who are so smart but can also be so damn stupid.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating.
It is. Dangered Wolf says, if you think about it, unemployment for African Americans was at its lowest during slavery.
Yikes.
Okay. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, let's do some more stories.
All right. Speaking of terrible things white people did, there was another Unite the White rally. No, Unite the Right rally, number 2. It went on a few days ago to commemorate the first anniversary of the original Unite the Right. I can't say it. A bunch of white people got together, and it was terrible the first time, and it was sucky the second time in a completely different way. No one was there. So this is Jason, what is his name?
Kessler.
Yeah, so he put together, he went and had this huge initiative to block off all the space that he needed, and they called in the police and everyone to get ready. Turned out there were more counter-protesters than there were actual white supremacists there. And the thing people are talking about today is how much it cost. So according to the Washingtonian, Jason Kessler's sparsely attended Unite the Right 2 rally cost the city $2.6 million, accounting for road closures, cleanup, and the 1,000-plus law enforcement officers who were on hand to keep the peace over the weekend. Now, to give you an idea of how many people showed up, there was a person named Luke Barnes who was there and tweeted out a photo of it that some people saw, and here's what that looked like. No one. It's like barely visible the sum total of Jason Kessler's manpower. They say that there were just a couple dozen people there. And so if you do the math on how much that cost per person, if you're the most generous you can be in terms of overestimating how many people from the white supremacist groups actually showed up, the district spent nearly $87,000 per attendee. In comparison, Washington, D.C. spent an average of $34,500 per homeless person in the entire year of 2017 versus the day that they spent doing the Unite the Right rally.
So, free speech is not free, quite literally in this case.
Yeah.
And look, it's infuriating when you look at public schools and how underfunded they are, when you look at healthcare and how underfunded that is, and then you look at something like this and see $2.6 million getting spent on white nationalists, right? It is infuriating. But with that said, they have a constitutional right to do the rally. And you've got to spend the money to make sure that violence doesn't break out, that you have authorities there to protect people, to keep protesters and counter-protesters separated so things don't break out in violence. So even though it is infuriating that resources go to something like this, I do believe in free speech and protecting our constitutional right to protest. And just because I don't like what they're protesting doesn't mean that I'm going to prevent it from happening or ban it from happening. With that said, I love the fact that the counter-protesters outnumbered, these white nationalists. It's fantastic.
Yes.
And I think what this shows more than anything is that, we do have Americans who are willing to come together and fight against hatred. But more importantly, the people who showed up last year but did not want to show up this year, I think they were afraid. I think they were afraid because there were consequences for them. I mean, first of all, someone got murdered.
Yeah.
And you were associated with a group of people who took part in that, right? And then more importantly, you have your dorky picture all over the internet holding a tiki torch and talking about,
yeah,
how much you hate Jewish people and everyone else. It's embarrassing. I would be incredibly embarrassed if I was in any of those photos.
So yeah, it's got to be, it's interesting to ask what would cause each individual person to stay home. For some, it's like, maybe they showed up and they're like, that is not, I'm a white supremacist, but I'm not that crazy white supremacist. Is that what happened? It's like, those are white supremacists. I just think we're pretty cool. Is that what it is? Is that what causes you to stay home? But yeah, I guess part should be grateful that there weren't as many people. I love that they're white supremacists and they think that they're better than everyone and everything, but they weren't even the best ralliers on their rally day. Other people were better at protesting than they were.
My favorite example of how ridiculous white supremacy is just Bannon, Steve Bannon. Just look at a photo of him.
Right.
He thinks he's better than everyone else who's not white. Right? Steve Bannon thinks that he's superior.
It's so great. They said they had air support, riot police, SWAT, and mounted officers who are also on hand. And the amount of money they spent would cover 75 homeless people for an entire year.
Oh, that's so infuriating. Oh my god. Okay, I know.
I like that they're like, yeah, it's unite the right to, gotta have that sequel.
Jason Kessler is so embarrassing. Like, but there's more about him. Like, there's other embarrassing stuff about him.
Yes.
We should talk about.
Let's get into this other story. Do you ever wonder what it's like to be in the life of a Nazi? Like, what is their daily life like? Well, now you can experience it too, through the wonder of a video that's gone viral. So, this is Patrick Little, who was a neo-Nazi from California, ran for Senate, by the way. There was a Nazi who ran for Senate, you didn't even know about it. And then Jason Kessler, the guy we talked about previously, who orchestrated the Unite the Right rally number 2. We join our friends in the middle of a generic discussion that the Nazis have about Jews and weird things, and you'll hear a voice in the back of Jason Kessler's little video monitor. And take a listen.
Big Orthodox crosses on their chest is often your place to point out is Jewish in the breaking houses of Israel.
Hey, you get out of my room!
Hey, sorry, I'm having an issue here. How about if you get a drum roommate there? Something like that.
Push me like that, my room.
I've got somebody who supports Orthodox Israeli like is we're at a crosshairs on that stuff. I don't agree with theirs. Hold on a second. Clean your room. I'm gonna assume that's a parent there. I'm not sure. Jason, why are you sitting with? You're not sitting with an Orthodox Jew, are you?
No, it's my father. Basically, the deal is my family watches American History Channel.
Oh, yeah.
And it's constant anti-German propaganda. The Nazis, the Jews, and the Jews. I'm stuck in a situation where I have to stay with my family because I'm paying for all these lawsuits, and I can't afford to do that without staying with my family. But they're pumped.
Dad, leave me alone. I'm trying to hate the Jews in here. You're always making me stop hating the Jews. I didn't use your room because my room you turned into a knitting room for Mom.
Oh,
God.
oh my God, that was amazing. That was amazing. I don't even know what else to say about it. His dad is awesome. Get out of my room. Why is he in his dad's room, right? Like,
Because his room's now Mom's knitting room. That's what it is.
No one watching the History Channel. They've been cooked because they keep hearing about how the Nazis were bad and stuff.
That's history. Do you know what you just said? You said your dad learns about the past, watches shows about the past, learns from it, and then realizes you shouldn't be hating the Jews like you are. He decided after watching a documentary about World War II that the Nazis were bad. Listen, a lot of people are like, Dad, I don't want to be like you. But they don't take it to so Dad likes the Jews, so I'm going to hate the Jews.
That was so incredible. That guy thinks he's superior to minorities.
Oh my God. There's more to this.
Tell me.
They talk more about the effect that this kind of intense scrutiny they're under has had on their lives.
Life has been pretty expensive the last few months. I still maintain an apartment and this note in case of eviction, and I trust Shlomo to figure out a way to get me evicted. But if I get in a situation where I can't have an apartment like you're in, I've got this stuff. Now I've been sorting out documents and stuff, but this is my baby. In the back there's a king size bed. In the front there's a double behind door number. And this table comes down and becomes a king size bed. I'm sorry, a twin bed. And I will be renting it out and stuff to try and cover expenses, or else I'll have to sell it at a huge loss to fund my company, give me some revenue.
Dude, Kate, I know Shlomo's gonna evict me. In the meantime, I have an apartment and a phone. Shlomo's playing the long game on you, is what it sounds like. Like, oh, times are tough here. You've got a boat with 3 beds in it? Oh, poor kid. My God. Oh,
Oh my God, it's so good.
so bad.
It's so good though. It's so good. It's so good.
I just don't understand how you can be sitting in your boat on the seas, which, yes, is the widest thing you can do. It sounds like a sailing vessel. And then complaining about how financially hard.
I know. But that's how they convince people to donate to their cause or whatever it is. But those are the guys, but look, beta tested. The reason why that's the master is because these are the guys who go around accusing other men of being beta, right? They're accusing other men of being betas. They're accusing other men. Like, you're living at home with your parents. And by the way, I don't think there's a ton of millennials who have to do that, a ton of young people have to do that because of student loan debt and all that. You're doing it because you're a loser. Because you failed at this ridiculous white nationalist Nazi movement. I'm getting sued because I organized this event where someone got run over by a car and died. Yeah, you're getting sued because you're a piece of crap. So enjoy your parents' home, and I hope your dad keeps yelling at you, you little loser, beta, cuck. Anyways,
Well, parents are cucked. What? You're in your dad's room. You're in your
dad's room, exactly.
Oh my God. All right, let's move on.
I think we have to take another break. Yeah, we do.
Okay, good, because the other story's really heart-wrenching, so.
My name is Allison Hartson. I am a national director with Wolfpack.
Pop on those 3D glasses, guys. It's fucking crazy.
The goal of Wolfpack is to get an amendment to the U.S. Constitution that will allow us to have free and fair elections. It's not the only issue, but it's the first issue, and that's money in politics.
The goal of Wolfpack is to get a representative democracy back in this country. The corruption issue affects every other issue. You name it. You can go down the list: education, the environment, the military, the economy. People at the top who are making the most money are the ones that are dictating all of the rules. That is the antithesis of a democracy.
Wolfpack has the most intelligent, plausible way to get money out of politics. We have the logical plan. So what we're trying to do is to use the power that our forefathers gave us in the U.S. Constitution through Article 5.
Article 5 is a specific procedure set up in the Constitution to propose amendments to it.
You have to work state by state. You need 34 states to make that happen.
Vermont, California, Illinois, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. We've passed no states so far.
One of the hardest parts of my job today, follow her. Give me a break. My name is Mike Manetta. I am a national director with Wolfpack.
We have decided to move Wolfpack from defense to offense.
We travel from state to state constantly. This year, she was gone from January 2nd until, I think, May, without ever going home once. So that's dedication.
I get frustrated and want to quit every other week. No, I'm kidding. Kind of. There are definitely really tough moments. But the most amazing thing about it all is that we get through it together and we get stronger because of it, and we just keep each other going. Like Mike and I, when I'm down, he pushes me forward, and when he's down, I push him forward, and we keep on going and work like a team like that. And that's what we tell our state teams, and that's why they need each other as well. Because it takes a lot of tenacity and a lot of perseverance and resiliency to be able to get legislation passed, period, let alone to fix corruption in the most powerful country in the world. When we passed in California, that was my first win that I got to personally enjoy. That was amazing. I think I was hooked. Officially hooked at that point.
I was in Rhode Island when we passed. I was probably there every single day that week, just standing outside, holding up signs, waiting for legislators. 2 years of really, really hard work condensed into this one amazing moment of victory.
To have those moments, it literally makes everything that we do so much more rewarding. If People are truly sick and tired of sitting by and watching what's happening to this country. And if people are truly sick and tired of just talking about it and tweeting about it and liking it and sharing it on Facebook, it's time to take action and get out on the streets and get involved and learn how to get involved even if you don't know how to. You cannot just complain from the sidelines in this day and age. There is too much going on. We need to do this now. There is no time to waste. Anybody who wants to get involved, is curious, is a little scared, but would like to know how to possibly start learning how to make this happen should go to wolf-pac.com, wolf-pac.com, and sign up to volunteer. No experience necessary.
The facts are on our side. The history is on our side. The public opinion is on our side, both on the policy and the procedure. We're going to find more success, and we will get this amendment.
There's no other option for me.
Okay, one quick TYT live for you. Aussie Garf says, best evidence against white supremacy, sunburn. I should know because I experienced it over the weekend. Hilarious.
I got this olive thing going on. It's pretty great.
You have a good complexion.
Yeah, my dad was dark, so I got that. Pretty exciting on the days that I go outside. It's fine.
What are you up to, huh? Stop talking about me. What else?
All right, that's it. I want to get to the next story so we don't run out of time.
Okay, so you may have heard some strange stories of people looking for jobs and getting rejected. This one is just, I've never heard one quite like this. Hermisha Robinson was looking for a job at a health company, and she thought she was well qualified, but then she posted the rejection letter she says she got. Here it is, from Mentality Health. It says, thank you for your interest in careers at Mentality Health. Unfortunately, we do not consider candidates that have suggestive ghetto names.
I can't believe this.
We wish the best in your career search. She says, my feelings are very hurt, and they even got me second-guessing my name, trying to figure out if my name is really that ghetto. I would like for everyone to share this post because discrimination has to stop. But this is what she got. I mean, you got to look at this and be like, what's going on?
But what's incredible to me is, like, how brazen that guy was in his email,
right,
in the rejection letter, and how he just clearly, openly said ghetto. Like, your name is ghetto. And he signed off on that. He thought that was a good idea. But how is her name ghetto?
I don't know. Her name's Hermisha Robinson. Here's what the person from the company said. Kevin Murray, the owner of the company, told KSDK that the company believes a former employee is behind the email and has since filed police reports to St. Louis County, Chesterfield, and the state, which are all places where he believes the hacking may have originated. So they say that they got hacked, but
that's always. I mean, look. Who knows? Maybe he's telling the truth, but I feel like that's the go-to excuse. Like, I got hacked. I'm sorry. Somebody sends out a terrible tweet. I'm sorry, I got hacked. You know, as soon as it's a little bit back.
That's what Weiner said.
Huh?
That's what Anthony
Weiner said that.
Oh, I got hacked. And
Ted Cruz. Did Ted Cruz say that?
I don't know. It sounds like something he would say.
Yeah.
But Anthony Weiner definitely said that, and it turned out he did not get hacked.
Right.
Someone else, Darnicia Zachary, said she got the same email from the company. So there are two explanations. One is that there is a company representative who is just a total jerk, racist piece of garbage, and the other is that there's a disgruntled employee doing this. But this is a story you may have seen, and that is the full story on what happened. But
yeah, it's crazy because there have been studies showing that there is discrimination based on people's names. And so one of the studies, if I remember it correctly, had to do with resumes. So you would have two resumes. They would be exactly the same with the exception of the name on the resume. And the study found that resumes that did not have so-called black-sounding names were much more likely to get the candidate hired.
Right, and Latino names too.
And Latino names too. That study was super interesting because they did control for everything else. Again, it was the same resume with the exception of the name. And so, like, what do you do in those situations? Like, if you're a parent who's about to name your kid, like, you have to actually consider these things, and it sucks.
Yeah. it is not good, and it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's the story on that. Let's move on. We have a little bit more time. Let's talk about this Pennsylvania Catholic Church thing really quick.
All right.
Pennsylvania Catholic Church just had a grand jury report released about its 6 of its dioceses. It's a 1,300-page report about 300 priests who coordinated efforts to basically cover up. It was much like Spotlight, the movie, cover up the various deeds that they did, sexual molestation. It's ridiculous. One particularly egregious and almost satirically ridiculous story emerged. Charges against Father Edward George Ganster. On one occasion, he dragged a boy across the living room floor, pulling him by the underwear. Gaster also beat the victim repeatedly, once using a metal cross, according to the report. The abuse at the hands of Gaster lasted for over 1.5 years and happened in St. Joseph's Rectory. That was reported in 2002, 23 years after it happened, or 2005, and then again in 2004. That went unreported to the diocese and to the the authorities. There was a second victim in 2005, a third victim in 2015. And then he put in for a recommendation after he quit on his own accord, not because of all of these allegations and activities, but he put in, he wanted to be laicized and turned into a non-priest after that, and he asked for a recommendation for a job. Where? At Walt Disney World. The happiest place on earth, to be around kids.
And did they give him that recommendation?
And they gave him the recommendation, according to the report. They said that they would be, the priest said, yes, we would give you a positive report. He got the job. He worked there for 18 years.
Oh my God. How could anyone, after all of this horrific scandal, right? This pedophilia, this sexual assault, the rape of children, like, how can anyone still support that church? Like, that I don't understand. And look, it wasn't just the fact that there were so many priests who engaged in this. It was the fact that the church went to extremes to cover it up, to brush it under the rug. The fact that they wouldn't punish these priests. They would actually write them recommendations for other jobs where they would be surrounded by other children. It's crazy to me.
I mean, the list goes on and on. CNN did a really good job of actually just putting bullet points around this. One priest in Harrisburg abused 5 sisters from the same family. Another priest groomed middle school students for sex, according to the grand jury, by telling them that Mary had to bite the cord off and lick Jesus clean after the nativity.
Okay.
And there was another one who, forged a pastor's signature so he could marry, laicize himself, marry a girl who was 17 that he got pregnant. And then, according to the grand jury, the priest was allowed to stay in the ministry by finding what they said was a benevolent bishop. And that is not what the word benevolent means. It's so terrible. Now, the grand jury said that since the Pope Francis era, like, these are older accusations, and there have been some changes, but they did issue some suggestions as a result of this grand jury report, including eliminating the criminal statute of limitations for sexually abusing children, creating a 2-year civil window for child sex abuse victims who couldn't file lawsuits before. Now that this is all coming to light, clarifying the penalties for a continuing failure to report child abuse, and then prohibiting non-disclosure agreements regarding cooperation with law enforcement. But, like, you see this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. These are religious people who believe that reproductive rights means murder, right? They consider themselves pro-life, but then remain complacent when children are being abused in their own churches.
They're supposed to be the moral guidance for people, and they act utterly ammorally, and they take advantage of their position in ways that, they're telling other people they'll go to hell for things that are much lesser than what they're doing to kids.
Yeah, look, we have criticism for mainstream media. We talk about it often on the show, but there are good things that come out of investigative reporting in the mainstream, and the revealing story of what happened in the Catholic Church is one of those stories. All right, thank you to Brett Ehrlich. Make sure you check him out on Happy Half Hour. And we will be back with Rebel Headquarters. Jake is here, so he will host that. And then members only post-game show. See you later.
What is this? Okay, I'm back. I was, you want me to move this way or something?
I was in a Midland meeting for the Young Turks, but I'm back for Rebel headquarters. We got an election coming up, guys. We got an election coming up. We got to keep doing Rebel headquarters. Obviously, I'll be here for the post game and for Old School tonight as well. All right, let's go to our first guest. Arjun Singh Sethi joins us. He is the author of American Hate: Survivors Speak Out. Arjun, welcome to Rebel headquarters. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right, first obvious question. What's the book about?
American Hate: Survivors Speak Out is a collection of testimonials of people targeted by hate under the Trump administration. There is no question that hate pre-existed Donald Trump and that hate will endure after Donald Trump. But it's also a fact that Donald Trump and this administration has emboldened hate across this country. And so I thought it was important to travel the country and meet with survivors in their homes, houses of worship, and community centers, and to really document this moment.
So, I'm sure the MAGA guys watching, if they are watching, are going to say, wait a minute, what do you mean hate? That's not fair. We're just making America great again. You guys just don't appreciate it.
Well, here's what community activists, community organizations, and survivors across this country say. They say that hate has spiked in every facet of American life. In the classroom, the university, the workplace, and public life. There have literally been thousands of incidents of hate in Donald Trump's America, where the aggressors specifically mention Trump's policies and Trump.
Okay, well, that would seem to be some evidence. But let's talk a little bit more about evidence, and then I want to get into the stories that are in your book. So, have hate crimes risen since not just Donald Trump's presidency, but his ascent, or maybe descent, when he first came down that escalator to announce his candidacy?
Sure. So let me answer the question in a couple of ways. The FBI tracks hate crime data every year, and if you look at the latest year for which they reported, 2016, the data shows a steady spike in hate crimes throughout the year, and then a huge spike right after the election. So even the FBI's data shows a spike in hate crimes. The other thing I want to make sure that all the listeners know is that even the FBI's data is incomplete, because the FBI data relies on voluntary reporting by law enforcement, not mandatory, which is why, according to the FBI, there were something like 6,000 hate crimes in 2016, but if you look at a survey like the National Crime Victimization Survey, there could be, I kid you not, as many as 250,000 hate crimes every year in America.
So, Arjun, what would you consider a hate crime under that definition?
So that's a really good question. And in the book, I very intentionally try to capture hate in all its forms, which is why you will find stories of bullying, cyber trolling, assault, vandalism, and arson of houses of worship, and murder. So there is no question that communities are experiencing hate crimes and intensifying hate crimes in this country, but they're also experiencing everyday acts of hate as well.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask it even though I shouldn't. Okay, so online, the right wing have a nickname for me, which I'm amused by, but I don't know, what others would think. They call me Fat Brown Buffalo, and I'm amused by that because it's true that I'm overweight. It's true that I'm brown, and Buffalo's kind of badass. But would you consider that an issue, a hate crime? I don't know. Look, everybody's different. I have really, really thick skin, so that's why I'm asking.
So, I think it depends on you and what you feel and what you're comfortable with. Here's what I can tell you is that there are people across this country who are cyber trolled incessantly. So let me give you an example. Tanya Gersh is someone who's profiled in the book. She's a Jewish American realtor and wedding planner who between November 2016 and the summer of 2017 received more than 800 menacing emails, phone calls, text messages, tweets, and the like threatening her life, publishing her young child's social media information. White supremacists threatened to march on her home.
Why?
So I really think that we need to be guided by survivors and guided by, the folks who are impacted.
So why did they do that to her in particular?
So her case is now the basis of a major lawsuit that's been filed by the Southern Poverty Law Center against the Daily Stormer, which is a white supremacist neo-Nazi outfit. I won't get into too much detail, but suffice to say, Tanya Gersh had a conversation with Sherry Spencer, that is Richard Spencer's mother, and encouraged her to sell a commercial building that she owned in Whitefish, Montana, and to donate the proceeds to a human rights organization. And what ended up happening was Sherry Spencer, for reasons that are unbeknownst to everyone, construed that as extortion, published an essay on Medium, and Andrew Anglin and the Daily Stormer and white supremacists across this country used that blog post as a reason to target Tanya and her family.
Did you talk? Was she one of the stories you talked to, or that's in your book?
Absolutely. I went to Whitefish, Montana, and I spent time with Tanya in Whitefish and with her lawyer from the Southern Poverty Law Center.
And how did she deal with that? Because that's pretty frightening. She's Jewish in the middle of Montana with all this hate raining down on her. No disrespect to the good people of Montana, but it's not like she's, in Brooklyn or Miami where there's a lot of people that come from her background. So it can feel isolating. And so did that make it worse? And overall, but even Montana or otherwise, Jesus, that has got to be a hell of a thing to deal with.
I encourage everyone to read the book for all the testimonials, and I will say that is a particularly powerful one. And she talks about how she came home one day and she saw her husband with all of their bags packed, saying, "We need to leave because we are being targeted, and white supremacists are threatening to march on her home." And when her husband mentioned the Daily Stormer, she didn't know what the Daily Stormer was. She had no idea why they were being trolled. But they stuck it out, and they fought. They decided to bring a lawsuit against the Daily Stormer with the support of the Southern Poverty Law Center. She also talks about how the local community really stepped up for her. So she mentioned that there were local businesses who actually put stickers in their windows saying, "Love lives here, not hate," to show solidarity with Tanya Gersh. And just so folks know how vengeful and abusive and cruel these white supremacists can be, what they ended up doing was they actually got on Yelp and wrote nasty reviews of those businesses who supported Tanya Gersh. It's actually laughable. Some of them mentioned how there were cockroaches at some of these restaurants, even though cockroaches aren't in Montana because of the climate.
Oh, well, that's two reasons I want to move to Montana now. Apparently they stick up for one another and there's no cockroaches. Okay. But look, and I know that there are hopeful strands in the book, and that certainly is hopeful. That's the America I know and love, when neighbors stand up for one another, no matter what their background. But let me go back to another disastrous story. That's Khalid Jabara in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What happened to him, and who did you talk to in relationship to?
So the Jabaras fled Lebanon because of the Civil War and made their home in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And they had a good life until a white supremacist moved next door. And he really menaced and terrorized them, calling them things like dirty Arabs, dirty Muslims, and ISIS. The neighbor then ran over Haifa Jabara, this is the mother of the family, in his car in late 2015. Haifa was hospitalized, sustained very serious injuries. The next-door neighbor was arrested. Initially, he was not allowed to post bond. But because a new prosecutor was appointed to the case who didn't know the history of the case, he actually allowed for bond to be posted. And as a consequence, the next-door neighbor, who had previously terrorized the family, run over the mother, was allowed to return next door to the family he had terrorized. And then months later, he murdered Haifa Jabara's son, Khalid Jabara, on his front doorstep. And I actually met with Haifa, Victoria, and Rami Jabara in the family home just 10 feet away from where Khalid was killed. I'd also like to let everyone know that this past Sunday was actually the 2-year anniversary of the murder of Khalid Jabara in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Man, that is powerful. And I mean, I'd ask you how they dealt with it, but there's no good way to deal with that. They haven't moved? They're still in the same place?
You know, they're still in the same place, and I will never forget Haifa Jabara telling me and saying, Arjun, I will never leave this home because this is where Khalid grew up. And I have memories of him being a little boy in this house. And where you're sitting right now is where Khalid used to type on his computer, and he will forever be here. But I will tell you, they are an extraordinarily brave family. When I visited, I attended the dedication ceremony of the Khalid Jabara Library, a new library in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Rami Jabara, who's now in Texas, is working to ensure that survivors of violent crime have protections in place so that they can't be targeted again in the way that their family was.
Yep.
Victoria Jabara is working with young people to ensure that they know the values of social justice, equity, and inclusion.
Powerful, powerful story. Arjun Singh Sethi, a community activist, civil rights lawyer, and law professor. The book is American Hate, Survivors Speak Out. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me and for all your great work.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We got some great guests coming up for you. Welcome back to Rebel Headquarters. We got two new fun guests for you guys. They have a borderline great idea, maybe even not borderline, maybe just great. It's something that I had hoped that it existed, and it turns out it does exist. So, and they're in studio. Justin Anderson and Christina Forrester joins us now, and they have started, Christina, you in particular started, the Christian Democrats of America. Okay, so welcome.
Thank you.
So when I first heard the Christian Democrats of America, it made me think of Germany. Don't they have Christian Democrats, some sort of political party like that?
Yeah, there's a European Christian Democrat.
Right.
That's why I added of America, so there wasn't confusion.
Yes, and plus you get to say Christian Democrats of America.
Yeah.
Taking it back.
That's right. So, all right, it's not a political party. So what is it?
It's an organization, and we are trying to bring back Christian values. We're trying to show that the religious right does not hold a monopoly on Christian values, and especially in the age of Trump, they have no right to that label of Christian voters, to the Christian vote, or Christian values.
It almost sounds like you guys are making Christianity great again.
I like to think so.
Okay, I love this because I do think it got hijacked. I guess, Justin, let me ask you, do you know how it got hijacked? I mean, because it seems like the Bible is predominantly about, especially Jesus' words are about helping the needy, the poor, and others.
Right.
But somehow it seems like if you listen to the evangelical right wing, you'd think the only thing the Bible mentioned was abortion and gay people.
Exactly. Those are the fights that we do fight. We kind of do actually know how it happened. We actually, on our podcast, What Would Jesus Pod, we talked to some of the people that helped build the 700 Club and actually hijacked the religion and turned it into a voting block. So we actually know exactly how it was done, and now we're just trying to get some help undoing it and bringing back values and integrity to that voting block and delivering it back to where it should be.
How mad were you guys when they took the title Pod Save America? Were you like, damn it? No, well, you can't say that. You're good Christians. Okay. Let's talk about that more, Christina. So, was there a time in this country when religious people were more across the spectrum, liberal, conservative, or evangelicals were more liberal? Did that time exist? When was it?
Absolutely. At the turn of the century, if you look at history, it was the evangelicals, big revivals, and accompanied with the big revivals, they were preaching a social gospel. And that's really what the gospel of Jesus Christ came down to, is helping the least of these. And you didn't see a revival coming to town that they weren't talking about some kind of social justice at the same time. So this has been something from the 80s it started, with the Reagan administration, the moral majority, and there's a whole history. We go into it quite extensively on our blog and our podcast and social media. It's been a hijacking and a manipulation of religion for the purpose of...
So the original Christian leaders and potentially even Jesus were social justice warriors?
Absolutely. Jesus was a progressive. He did things that men were not doing in his time. He was washing women's feet. He was traveling around. He was
eating with tax collectors and sinners.
He was taking the Pharisees to task. There's a lot of things that Jesus was a social justice warrior.
Yeah. So he was certainly anti-establishment.
Absolutely.
I don't think anybody could dispute that. So how did they do it? Was it that they went to evangelical leaders and they're like, I don't know, you want to be conservative? Or did they pay them? Was there a plan? How did it happen?
Yeah, it's been a slow... There's a lot of propaganda in the religious right, and we were just talking about this outside, actually. We hear it's like a broken record on social media of, well, what about Democrats are against abortion or for abortion. Democrats want to kill babies. Democrats are for, same-sex marriage. They're against God. They boo God. I mean, it's like this constant stream of propaganda, and we've seen this for years. I founded the organization in 2006, and I did it because I saw represented in politics and in the media, there was only one voice for Christians, and that's not the voice I heard growing up as a pastor's kid, as a worship leader, youth leader. I didn't hear that voice. The voice I heard was one of love and acceptance for all people and fighting for the least of these, the poor.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So
Is the media complicit? Because it seems like the right-wing evangelicals get an enormous amount of attention, and left-wing preachers, which exist, of course, left-wing religious leaders get almost a complete, I don't want to say ban, I don't think it's a conspiracy, but completely washed out. Like, you never hear it at all. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, this is something that's frustrated us to no end for the last decade, because anytime you see, here's the Christian response, it's going to be some wacko on the farthest fringe of the right, and now it's going to be a Trump supporter, it's going to be someone on the farthest end, religious right, that's supposed to be speaking for all Christians. And we've been asking for years, trying to step up to mainstream media and to print media, say, let us have our voice, because there are millions of Christian Democrats. We just need our voice.
And what do they say? No?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes
do they bother justifying the no?
It's mostly been kind of hitting a block wall. It's been difficult but hopefully that's coming down, and hopefully they see a need for the representation, because we have a whole segment of our society that is not represented right now.
Yeah. So, Justin, look, I'm part of the things I'm worried about is that they're using Christianity to push hate. But if I were you, and I'm not Christian, I'm agnostic. But if I were you, I'd also be concerned, mad that they're perverting the idea of Christianity, and for young people that don't hate, which is luckily the great overwhelming majority of young people, they're going to push people away from Christianity.
Absolutely, we find that a lot. People reach out to us that say they've left their church and they haven't been back in 10 years. They couldn't stand what was happening. One lady reached out and said that the new Christianity, the new Christians, basically hijacked her whole church and ostracized people that didn't believe with them. And we have thousands of these stories. People reach out to us all the time about this type of stuff.
I get an email or a social media post at least daily, usually about 10 a day, from people saying, I've lost either family or my church, or do you know of a church I can go to? That's why we started a safe church directory, and we call it a safe church.
Oh, wow.
People are literally afraid, especially if they're LGBT, are they going to be accepted when they walk into a church, or is it a Trump church, unfortunately?
Yeah, so I want to give the website in case you guys want to reach out to them if you're watching. ChristianDemocratsOfAmerica.org, and there it is. And so, Christina, what do you hope to do with the organization? Is it, do you have members, and then what are your activities, etc.?
Yes, we do. We have members nationwide. We have a Christians Against Hate and Christians Resist movement. So those are both the hashtags: Christians Against Hate, Christians Resist. Mm-hmm. And within both those movements, we have a lot of various activities. You can go on our website and go to join the movement, check it out. We have a robust Christians Against Hate group on Facebook that's very active, and that's really turning into a resistance movement. And beyond that, it's really providing a voice, giving people a community, and electing Democrats that support our values too.
Are you guys a PAC? Do you also contribute to Democrats, or no?
Not this time. We do endorse.
You endorse
candidates, yeah. And we provide a values voters guide to talk, so that people can talk to their churches and open up that conversation a little better with other Christians. Say, hey, I'm voting Democrat, and this is why, because of my values. I'm voting Democrat because of my Christian values.
Right. So let me ask both of you. Look, I think that the most important thing by far is, what do you emphasize? Do you emphasize the love, helping the poor, or do you emphasize the divisive issues? So on that's easy. You guys are choosing love and bringing people together and helping the needy, and that's amazing. But when you do get down to abortion and gay marriage, how do you answer those people when they, say, oh, well, aren't the Democrats pro-choice, etc.? I don't even know what your views on abortion and gay marriage are. So how do you answer that?
Well, with abortion, it's safe, legal, and rare. And we have an entire platform on abortion that anyone can go look at, but really bringing it back to what does pro-life really mean, because a lot of people that talk about being pro-life, really they're just anti-abortion, and they're not looking at a real solution to reduce abortions. Under Democrats, abortions have been lower rates than with any other presidency,
Yeah.
Democrat president. So
Yeah, I partly ask because again I'm agnostic, but I've read parts of the Bible or a lot of the Bible, and in Numbers, the Bible appears to be pro-abortion. It talks about give your wife a toxic potion, and if she miscarries, that means she cheated on you. Well, a miscarriage because you gave her a toxic potion, that's an abortion. But everybody's got their own point of view on it, and you were saying at least under Democrats there's less abortion, right?
Yeah.
And Justin, how about the issue of gay marriage?
Well, gay marriage is an issue that God is about love, and if there's a love between two people, then that love should be recognized. Absolutely, doesn't matter. It doesn't say anything about same-sex relationships, per se. There's one passage I believe that Paul wrote that has been mistranslated basically since he wrote it to say that it's two men, but it's really the translation should be man to younger man.
Right. Yeah. Well, that we can all agree on.
Yes.
Okay, we're out of time. We can do a whole nother interview talking about how they hijacked Christianity, because that is amazing how effectively they did that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But
they know how to hit the hot button issues.
They really
over
do.
and over.
They know how to do it.
All right. ChristianDemocratsOfAmerica.org is the website, and they are literally doing God's work. So, thank you so much, Christina and Justin, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for setting up the organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. That's all, guys. We got a post game coming up for you. Anna's going to be back. tyt.com/join to become a member and get that. We'll see you over there. Yeah.